Hello, hello. Welcome to Dhamma on the Sidewalk. I hope you're well today. Welcome you back. It's been a while since the last conversation and this last insights or reflections on my recent pilgrimage in India. And as I am about to embark on a short discovery of Bhutan, I thought it was a good opportunity now to in the main lines, wrap up the past 3 months of pilgrimage in India at the main Buddhist holy sites. Welcome to Dhamma on the Sidewalk, insights, interviews, and practical tips on the teachings of the Buddha for people of all walks of life, attuning, exploring, integrating the teachings in everyday life. Simple Dhamma for daily life. I'm Asoka, hosting Dhamma Capsule for people like you. I wouldn't want to wrap it up in terms of details, what it is that I've been doing, and main places such as Varanasi and Sarnath, and I spent a lot of time in Bodh Gaya. That was my intention, and also meeting His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I'd rather bring these insights and reflection on sort of comparison, or putting them side by side, events that have occurred that I have witnessed, and that sort of putting them together, which took me almost a month to distill, because it was quite intense. It was full immersion, but it was also intense in terms of, in these places there's a lot of conventional reality of events happening. Yes, bowing, chanting, meeting people, talking Dhamma, and maybe meeting people we knew from before, or new encounters, quite interesting. But there's a very almost explicit, unconventional reality happening as well. And in that sense, I meant bringing up, activating energies, karmic energies, and cleaning up, and also becoming deeply aware of our own reality, our own life, and past, present, and hopefully future. So it's been quite intense, and it took me a while to distill it. So I came to, by putting them side by side, as coming from also the Thai forest tradition, which I've been practicing for several years, and also myself coming from the Mahayana tradition before that, but not really experiencing it to this extent as I had in Bodh Gaya. I came to think that these 2 months that I've spent there in Buddhist holy sites gave me a chance to almost witness a sort of evolution of how Dhamma traveled from one location to other parts, and mainly to the Himalayan region, and then it traveled to Eastern Asia. So it is quite interesting to observe this and sit here and trying to put this into simple words for maybe people who haven't been, or those who listen, who may not have a grasping, or may not have had the chance to visit those places, or to really understand. I'll try to make sense of these intricate realities as well. The Tipitaka Chanting Festival, for instance, which is held every year in early December, between a quarter moon and a full moon in Bodh Gaya at the Mahabodhi tree, gathers about up to, I would say, easily 5,000 people out of which 3/4 are bhikkhus and nuns, bhikkhunis from mainly Southeast Asia, the Theravada countries. It can also be that they're coming from India, they're coming from parts of Korea and East Asia, but mainly it's really Southeast Asia, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos. And the Tipitaka Chanting Festival it's a week-long recitation of the Vinaya Pitaka, which are some of the core texts emerging in the Pali Canon, so at the root of the Theravada practice. And the pace is very different. Also the where it's basically saffron robes, and the organization of the festival is also characteristic of that tradition. So the chanting is in Pali, the rhythm are different from one country to another. And then slowly, by mid-December, there was a changing energy in the city, in Bodh Gaya, changing energies, slowly, the bhikkhus traveled back, and the laity accompanying them also traveled back, and it was replaced by Mahayana monks, Tibetan, all the Himalayan region was represented, Tibet, Nepal, Ladakh, Zanskar, you name it, all the Himalayan, Bhutan, and all the other Mahayana practices from Korea and Vietnam. So the colors changed, the city changed, and about 100, I would say easily, 10,000s of people, up to probably 60,000. It was really full. His Holiness the Dalai Lama was there as well, and he spent about a month in Bodh Gaya offering teachings and long life prayers on the 1st of January. And the chanting and all the Tibetan schools, the Kaju and Nyingma, Gelug and Shakya all have their week-long Monlam chanting, which is also a week-long recitation of King of Prayers, Samanta Bhadra, so sharing of aspirations. These are also sharing of, let's say, may the benefit of my practice, may my practice and the benefits of my practice be distributed to all people who are suffering. And there was a completely different energy, different types of chanting, different people, different laity as well, different people meeting, encounters, and it was, and then attending His Holiness teachings and His Holiness long life prayers. I think that morning we might easily have been beyond 10,000. Between the monastics and the lay and the foreigners, and it was major attendance, a lot of people at the Kalachakra grounds in Bodh Gaya, and all of that in silence. It was a cross-cultural experience. It was beautiful to witness such a big crowd that is not ecstatic, outwardly ecstatic, but is inwardly experiencing the Dhamma inside. So inwardly happy to be there, has to be there. For some, these events are cultural, religious, and spiritual, and to a certain extent politically connotated. So it was quite a major eye-opening, and it is said that to attend these events in Bodh Gaya has a major significance for one's own life. So what I have observed as well with His Holiness the Dalai Lama is um, his team, from security to attendant and his close suite, I would say, working around him, making sure he's fine, making sure he's secure, and that he gets his tea is warm. But not only that, is also how we interact with them to actually get a pass to attend those events. And we are thousands of people queuing up every day to in a hotel to get to this, in front of these guys, to actually get the pass, to be registered, because there's security. We have to give a passport and this visa, and there's a lot of work going on there, and it's all done with heartfelt dedication, patience, gratitude. There's it's very different from anything else that I might have observed or experienced, even in monasteries. It's a very high level of practice of Dhamma. There's a lot of integrity there with the Dhamma. I can't really find the correct words. I would say yes, there was patience, and there was a sort of, yeah, this is going to happen. And these people work tirelessly. They're dedicated. They are dedicated to the mission that they are accomplishing. They are dedicated, but they are dedicated with a very sense of the calm. There's no rush movement. There's no manifestation of or expression of, I would say, anger or discomfort. It's all done smoothly. It's really very very beautiful. And when I said that I've observed these changes of energies from, it may be just my own interpretation of how I witnessed between the Tipitaka chanting festival and all these end of January up to the end of all these Monlam festival, with these thousands and thousands and thousands of Mahayana monastics, Tibetan, mainly Tibetan monks and nuns, and the laity, but also it really is a cross-cultural experience there. There are people prostrating, there are people coming, some people coming by bus, making long journeys by bus from the Himalayas to come down to Bodh Gaya. Bodh Gaya, the energy of Bodh Gaya changes completely. Well, that is the karma of Bodh Gaya. It does change with all these waves of laity and monastics coming the whole year long. Maybe it reduces a lot between June and September, when there's a dip of the rainy season, but otherwise the whole year long Bodh Gaya experiences these shifts of waves of energies of monastics and laity. But during the winter is where there is this, yeah, as I said, this cross-cultural and cross-religious events. There also was the International Sangha Forum, which gathered a number of, I would say, religious leaders from the main traditions and from a lot of countries, and they discussed the Vinaya. Vinaya is the discipline, the code of discipline, the rules of the main rules of conduct for monastics. So there was quite an interesting event there, also attended by some laity. And then as I came into Bhutan, into Nepal, I had to, as I said, I was taking a pause, but it remains mainly a Mahayana Mahayana ground with Guru Rinpoche, so Padmasambhava, and main monasteries around Kathmandu. And one of my favorite is Sheshan Monastery down nearby the Bodhanath Stupa. I had the chance to meet Lama Machirikar, who is been living there and has been supporting the monastery since he was a monk. He's a disciple of Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, and the monastery in Kathmandu, Sheshan, is run by the same lineage of Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. And also the interaction with Lama Machirikwa was quite eye-opening, as we were discussing, for instance, karma. And he said, yes, it's very good to be aware of and to try to clean up the karma and to always do good things, but or wait for certain things, this expression, it's my karma to do these things. But it's important also to kick the karma. You can't just sit there and watch your karma do it for you. You can modify your karma, which means you can improve the way you operate in life. Karma doesn't mean being fatalistic, and doesn't mean that, okay, it's like this, I take it. No, it's possible to modify, it's possible to reorient our own action into understanding that there's a possibility of action. This karma is action. Karma is action towards putting new seeds towards something. So the past, present, and future is all contained in that seed of karma, and it's possible to change it. And I knew that, and it was being told that by the senior monk, by the Gelong Lagma Machirika. It was very very nice to hear that from him as well, as we were doing circumambulations around the monastery.
At a very fast pace, and it's something that is quite unusual for monks, but also usual in the sense that there is urgency. The fast pace is an expression of urgency, and that in Theravada, in Pali, it's called samvega, and it's that of living by the Dhamma. There's so much that needs to be done, and at the moment I have only this incarnation to do that. So that's how we were walking around the monastery at Sheshan Monastery. So now I'll speak more about another aspect that I think is quite interesting, comparing Theravada and Mahayana. So this festival is known in the Theravada tradition at the full moon of February, Magha Puja. And the Magha Puja is in Tibetan Buddhism is called Chotrul Dechen. So I speak about Magha Puja in Theravada tradition. It's usually held on the full moon of February. So it's towards the end of the winter season, just before the rains, just about halfway before the rain starts. And it is said in the tradition that that day in particular, spontaneously, bhikkhus assembled around the Buddha walked all the way to the monastery of the Buddha requesting a teaching without consulting each other. So they spontaneously turned up, and there were 1,250. So that's why it's like a very large gathering and a very large audience, and they requested a teaching from the Buddha. This is why it's called Magha Puja. It's a day to celebrate Sangha and harmony in the Sangha and communal living, as well as because it's very large. So it's right, Magha. So it's Magha Puja, it's Maha Sangha, it's really very big. and it's an opportunity for the lay guests, for the lay laity to make offerings, and it is said that on those days whatever is being done as a good action is multiplied 1,000-fold. Whatever is done not good is also multiplied 1,000-fold. So it's a very good, meritorious and auspicious day. And as I was mentioning, Sheshan Monastery, that day I arrived at Sheshan Monastery it was 25th of February, Sunday 25th. So the full moon is still on the effect of the full moon. In the Tibetan calendar, which is not similar, it's not a lunar calendar, it's not exclusively a lunar calendar, it is a solar and lunar calendar. It has 32 days, and I'm not really familiar with the details of the Tibetan calendar. However, on that day was a full moon, and it was the last day of the week-long Monlam festival. As I said earlier, Monlam festival is a week-long chanting of aspirations and a particular text from the sutras. And it was coinciding with the Chotrul Dechen, which is the name of Magha Puja in Tibetan. And Chotrul Dechen, interestingly, doesn't have the same background. Or maybe it has, but it's like kind of presented in a different way that I don't really know. However, it is a festival as well. It's called the Butter Lamp Festival. Butter Lamp represent enlightenment, awakening, support to the practice. And on that day, many butter lamps are being lit. It also is a day where apparently it's also called the miraculous day. So it is meant to mean the day that the Buddha expressed superpowers or siddhis. And the siddhis are called, usually they tend to be called like supernatural powers, like levitating and things like that. Let's just call them superpowers and or super talents. And it is said that on that day the Buddha expressed the superpower of compassion and the superpower of debating with other teachers. And if you're a bit familiar with Buddhism and practices, you might know that in Tibetan Buddhism, the practice of debating on concepts from the Sangha is a very big portion of the practice and the training of the mind and the training in the monasteries during the 3 years intensive training. So debating on concepts such as emptiness, origin of elements, and complicated, intricate, complex of Buddhist philosophy. And this is being practiced across all schools. Debating is one of them. And apparently on that day, the Buddha expressed the superpower of debating with other teachers. And if you're also familiar with how the Buddha was accustomed to teach, he would have been challenged by others who were trying on the one side to try to understand his philosophy, and on the other hand were trying to challenge him and say, are you really sure like this is the way it works, like negating this and then accepting that and seeing this like that. So he had he also had some ways to answer questions, and I'm not going to go into the details about that now, but in particular on that day, he demonstrated very good qualities of debating with other teachers. So this is for the Chotrul Dechen in the Tibetan tradition. And Sheshan Monastery that day, so Sheshan Monastery is a Nyingma tradition monastery. So it might differ in other schools of Buddhism, in the Guluk or in the Shakya or the Kagyu schools. But somehow what I wanted to say is that Tibetan festivals tend to be more display of colors and music and costumes, and they're reenacting a traditional traditional teachings and traditional ancient ways of doing things. So it was quite colorful, it was quite dynamic, it was quite musical as well. And it is said that it was auspicious to be there on that day and to witness this and observe all this display. It was quite nice. And it also brought me to, inevitably to compare a bit, in a way to say how nice it is. And in the Buddhist, in overall, across all the Buddhist schools, there isn't a standard in how things are being done, as well as there isn't a standard calendar. Like for the Magha Puja, in Theravada is celebrated on one day, and Chotrudeshan is celebrated on another day, and it coincides with other festivals, and how it is more lively, more dynamic. In the Theravada tradition, everything often tends to be more toned down and austere, as it is said to be one of the most austere, especially the Thai forest tradition, to be one of the most austere practices. And this also brings me to say it is often considered, Buddhism trying to put everything together in the same school and in the same, it's Buddhism. And Buddha didn't invent Buddhism. Buddha just had teachings, and a large compound of teachings which traveled and then became contextual teaching way far after he passed away. So, for instance, Buddhism arrived in the Himalaya in Tibet in the 8th century. So it's about 1,000 years after his passing, the Buddha's passing. So things had evolved, mindsets have evolved, but the teachings as well changed and got integrated into the practices. That's why, for instance, in Tibetan Buddhism, there are more so-called shamanic practices in Tibetan medicine, which aren't really there in the Theravada tradition. And that's not to say that one is better than the other. It's just the diversity. The colors of the robes is not for distinguishing themselves from one to another. It is because they were using natural dyes, and they were using natural dyes coming from where they were. And it just happens that the soil contained more of certain pigments, and the robes became saffron. And in other parts of the Himalaya, they didn't have the same pigments, so the robes became red. So that's how it happened, mainly. And this is, I think there often is a tendency to put all in, it's Buddhism, and it's not a religion, and Buddha is not a god, and this tends to be this amalgam and this simplification. But no, it's actually, we now still have only 85,000 texts from the oral tradition that have been transcribed. So there's a lot more to learn on what is being left for us in terms of legacy. And then there also is this in Tibetan, in the Mahayana is also called the northern school of Buddhism, while the Theravada is called the southern school of Buddhism, like rather putting it geographically rather than just by content. And it's a bit Buddhist friendly, I would say, rather than say, well, you guys are the, those who look only after themselves, and then the others are the Maha, they look after others. But that's not the way it is. I mean, I think we need to avoid generalization, and also avoid reducing Buddhism to just this simplification, simplifying it like that. But it is, anyway, that within the Mahayana tradition, there is more communication. There are more women present as well. There's more interaction between men and women than in the Theravada tradition, which tends to be more seclusive and more inward-looking. And it's like this. It's the way it is. So it's just people practicing the Dhamma. So the Dhamma with a capital D is actually corresponds to referring to the actual teachings, the compound of teachings, but Dhamma with a small d is actually the Dhamma that you and I live. Just the simple Dhamma for daily life, or it's even the Dhamma on the sidewalk, which is the events of life, the reality we are involved in. So as I move on now to Bhutan soon, I'll leave it here for today. And I already hint to the fact that there will be some conversations originating from Bhutan, as I have a few conversations scheduled for my time there. And it's going to be another dive into Mahayana, but with a different tone, because Bhutan is still very secluded in terms of the way also the Dhamma has remained enshrined in the governance system. And I also have a number of other conversations scattered, so the further insights that I have gained from the pilgrimage will be distilled, and also they will be shared not necessarily by me, some of them still more by me, but others by people I have encountered with whom I have scheduled some conversations in the months to come. So there's more on the list than I can say for now. So in the meantime, I wish you well. And I remind you that it is possible to connect to different types of realities, conventional reality and non-conventional reality. And the non-conventional reality is also where the Dhamma is, and that is not necessarily only in this investigation of the mind, but understanding and really shattering, shredding into tiny pieces the dual mind of thinking that there is a duality, there is me here and there is a wall there and a screen there and a microphone and a reality out there. Everything is connected. And in that unconventional reality is where everything happens. That's where we can start seeing on our big screen of our reality, our karmic imprint, and it becomes really quite fascinating to live through that. And that is one of the main things that happened to me in Bodh Gaya. It's liberating, and it's become fabulous to live like that. It's much easier. Anyway, I'm not saying anything any longer. I'll leave it on this for all the forthcoming conversation. In the meantime, I wish you well. I wish you to remain happy, healthy, contented, and easily satisfied. May you all be well. Thank you for listening.